My car will. My car will. My car will. Okay, good evening, everyone. We could wrap up the table talk. Welcome to our May monthly dinner and virtual simulcast event. I'm Mr. Matt Lowy, your chapter president. I'm close to 3 weeks away from my first year, trusted with your chapter's leadership. So thank you for your trust and confidence. The project manager's pain point drill of what keeps you up at night, despite maybe other things, should keep them up at night. Making sure that you get your $20 worth of membership value does often keep me up at night. I'm also 0-5 right now as a head coach for a 12 and under Little League baseball team. So those parents probably wish that was keeping me up at night, but we're trying. So. But thank you for being a member. We know there's anywhere else in the world you could be tonight, especially for a virtual audience. So the fact that you're spending tonight with us for networking and a night of great enlightenment means a lot to us. Okay, last month, thanks to our Vice President of Special Projects, Mr. Jim Steckel, we drew the scholarship winners. We're happy to announce that they accepted the scholarships. So Ms. Tavani Hole from Northwest High School in Germantown, Maryland, and Ms. Sydney Robinson from Walter Johnson High School in Bethesda, Maryland. So for those who know our co-vice president of programs, Mr. Bill Ziegler, and his allegiance to Blair High School, the fact that we didn't rig it for Blair High School should mean something. So they're off to do great things in their quest for higher education in the fall, and $1,500 doesn't pay what it used to for school, but it's better than nothing. So, but they're very thankful, and both of them aced their test, which they could have used Google or ChatGPT to take the quiz, but at least they did that. So, yep, we salute them and look forward to their journey, and maybe they'll be members someday. Okay, our next dinner meeting is the first Wednesday of June. We're happy to announce Mr. Elias Center, the Director of Operations for PCI, and he'll be presenting on what makes a problematic employee also makes an excellent entrepreneur. And this is a younger man in his career who founded a company, and the Hollywood depictions of the founder of the company gets booted out by the board and doesn't get to celebrate in all the riches that the company has. This is a part of Mr. Center's story, so it'll be a great presentation. We know the first Wednesday of June, it's going to be 95 degrees. You're going to want to be outside, not in our humble basement abode here, but
it's cooler here.
Yeah. So consider joining us, and we'll also offer the virtual simulcast. For those who got raffle tickets, we did have a new book to raffle, but I haven't gotten the signed plates yet, so that'll be for our June meeting. So new raffle prize in June is another perk. So if everybody wants to grab their tickets, we still have copies of The Art of Insubordination from Dr. Todd Cashton, our October symposium speaker. We're almost through with the book stuff. So if you already have the book and you win, if there's a first time attendee here from the chapter who doesn't have the book, feel free to give the book to them, or it makes a lovely gift. So any first time attendees with us tonight? Great. So we have 3. Welcome. And we'll bring up. Okay.
What are the odds? Last 2 numbers, 389.
389. Okay, Dr. Jones, you want to give your book to somebody else? Okay, we'll give it to your member of the table. Thank you. And one more winner. And it is a signed copy.
Last three digits are 405.
405. Okay. So if you want to give that one to Ben. Okay. Thank you. Okay. We did, as a board at our January board meeting, discuss, is it of the member value for what we pay to the restaurant for the annual November member appreciation dinner to have it, or would that money going to symposium or an event be better? So at least for this year, but we will ask in the survey if that's a value add for your membership. But we'll be down here the first Wednesday of November, November 5th. There'll be 2 buffet lines there, a free dinner, complimentary for all active members, and it's only $20 for membership. So I'm not good at math or baseball coaching, but a $20 membership versus a $35 dinner, you're still making money. So just a reminder to renew the membership. And in the spirit of the looming holiday season at that time, we're happy to have Dr. Jeffrey Jones, who's with us today, speak on becoming Santa. You could say, well, is Santa a project or is it operations? But so he'll explain that, and he'll, not sure, but I think he'll be in proper attire, and there could be reindeer on the roof. So join us for that session. And yeah. Okay, our next virtual lunch and learn is next Friday. For those who don't know, PMI has their own learning model, just like pretty much everybody has their own version of AI learning model, but the PMI one is good in terms of what it delivers for project management deliverables and things of that nature. So I'll be deep diving into where you should use PMI Infinity versus where you should use Copilot versus where you should use OpenAI's ChatGPT. So, and that'll be on demand as well for those who don't have a lunch hour free. PMI Global's done a great job with annual reports and all the research from the research team in recent years. The Global Project Management Talent Gap Report is now available. So if you go to PMI.org, it's on the front splash page. Just log in, you can download it. It's pretty interesting in terms of where they think by 2035, 2040, what the project management industry is going to look like in terms of the demand versus the resources available. And is contrary to the opinion that AI is going to take all of our jobs and they won't need project and program managers anymore. So interesting research. We'll make sure the links in our newsletter as well. Who wants to be a part of history? Raise your hand. Okay, because the Project Management Body of Knowledge, 8th edition, is available to contribute comments to. So if you want to look over 300 pages of content, and 5 years from now, 2 years from now, when your staff's studying for their PMP exam, you can be like, I was a part of the your study guide. So it will be released to the public in December of this year. We're expecting the PMP exam and some of the other exams to pivot to this curriculum by this time next year. But there'll be a link in the newsletter for if you did want to review it and provide comments, that's available through June 2nd. And you can self-report PDUs from there if you're asking what's in it for me. So whatever hours you spend could be PDUs back to you. Okay, keep tabs on our calendar, like all the emails that you get in your Gmail account that you delete, like I look at in terms of webinars and events and put them out on there. So it could be one-stop shop for everything from software as a service events to state and local events. We know a few people here have some job announcements, so you want to come up, but if you either have a job to offer or want to put on the courage hat and come up and give a quick elevator speech for yourself. We know these are critical times for everyone. So,
good evening. My name is Michael Georgiou. 6 months ago, I was in the same place asking for a job. Now I'm in front of you announcing that I started a recruiting business. So if anyone is interested for themselves or they know people who may need assistance with finding a job, I'd be more than happy to help. Along the same lines, if you think you are through and you no longer want a W-2 job and you want to become an entrepreneur, not in the recruiting business, but any business, I can connect you with the franchise broker that helped me be here now. So that was my announcement. I'll leave my business cards over here.
thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone have a job or want to market themselves? Go ahead, sir. Sure. Just for our virtual people. We have about 40 on the line via Zoom. So.
Okay, thank you. I think Krispy Kreme, $30,000 gets you a franchise. So anybody's interested in that, seemed like a good deal to me anyway. My name is Ben Knight. I currently live in Williamsburg. My wife and I are going to be relocating, trying to find a good area to relocate to. We feel like this is a nice spot for us. So my current job is we were bought by a new company and they have a return to work policy, which I don't mind returning to work, but they closed our office, which was nearby, and they moved it to Charlotte. So at the end of June, and they're probably going to try to extend me, but at the end of June, officially today, I'm going to be looking for a new job as a program manager. So if you have a need for real good looking, not so young guy, I'm going to be open, and so I'll probably walk around the room and get some business cards if we still have those these days. I don't have one, but we'll write something down, I guess, the good old way. But I appreciate this. Seems like a really nice group. Great table over here. So you got a nice chapter. You can't get, and it's not only did I win a book, but it's signed. So yeah, I got lucky tonight. So anyway, thank you so much.
Okay, and we promised launching our job board last month. It is up in terms of populating it. We're working on that part of it, but focus on continuing to deliver value there. If you need PDUs, we're one of the few chapters in the world that puts all the content that our speakers approve available for on-demand access with PDU claim codes. So if you find yourself with a spare hour or two or need some background noise, we have great content from basically the start of the pandemic in April of 2020 to tonight's presentation, which should be uploaded by tomorrow. So we're also one of the few chapters in the world that have a sister Toastmasters group. So I welcome our Toastmasters reps to the stage.
Thank you, Matt. Good evening, everyone. I am the PMI-Montgomery County Toastmasters Club president for this club year, running through the end of June. And for us, we have meetings where we meet virtually on the second and fourth Wednesday of the month on Zoom. So if you want to improve your public speaking, get better at presentations, running meetings, this is a place that will give you a place to practice that before having to actually do the presentation or like the meeting, the speech ahead of time, and kind of give you the confidence you need so that you can make those big meetings and presentations. And with our with our club, we meet virtually twice a month on the second and fourth Wednesday of the month via Zoom. And on the third Wednesday, we do in person. Currently, we are at Davis Library, and we'll be there through June, and then July it'll be Potomac Library. And our next meeting is next Wednesday, the 14th, virtually from 7 to about 8:30 p.m. And I also have our VP of membership, and so I will turn it over to him.
Thank you, Supreet. Thank you, Supreet. Good evening, everyone. Me again, Alan from the PMI-Montgomery County Toastmasters Club. Wow, what a month since we last met in early April. Even if you hate social media, you never watch TV, and you are not into politics, you cannot not notice what is going on in this country and in the world. I love political shows, and House of the Card is my favorite. But this is way better than House of the Card if it is a TV show. The difference is that this is real, and it impacts real people. Many of us are experiencing a very difficult time now. People lost jobs, many businesses got hurt, and we all worry about inflation, job market, Social Security, and yes, World War III. Everywhere we go, we can smell anxiety. One way to manage anxiety and stress is to find help from local communities, a strong community like this chapter, where we can build network, seek help, and share opportunities. And our Toastmaster Club is also a very supportive environment where we can build confidence in our communication and leadership skills. It has become very obvious that someone at the top of the command chain need to improve their communication and leadership skills. And of course, if they reach out, I think we can help. So I will be waiting for their calls because they need us more than we need them. Okay, back to you. Enjoy your dinner and the talk. And thank you all for building this strong, awesome community.
Okay, our sister chapters in the National Capital Region are doing great things. PMI-WDC, which is 12,000 chapters strong, or 12,000 chapter members strong, is going through, they elected a new president, so she's hitting the ground running, but right now they're more focused on virtual and trying to renew some agreements for in-person locations, which is easier said than done. So they have a virtual lunch and learn next Monday, and then the virtual monthly meeting on Wednesday, both free. Most of the PMI-WDC events are around $30 to $40. So if you're a member of all 5 chapters in the NCR, it's an extra $160 a month or $160 a year, which isn't cheap, but it could be affordable if your company pays for it. So PMI Baltimore's has their chapter dinner event in Columbia at the UMBC Training Center in a few weeks. So that'll be navigating the challenges of a changing organization. Right now with the executive orders and just the trickle-down effect on the private sector with those, a lot of our organizations aren't the same as they were 5 months ago, a year ago. So this will be a powerful talk. And then Silver Springs done a great job. I wish I would have came up with the idea of going on field trips to really learn about, it's probably more operations and projects, but how a radio station works or a television station or a concert venue. And right now, Audi Field, home of Major League Soccer's DC United for soccer fans. So they'll take you through the front office, the press room, how they manage all the catering and the food. And it's going to be a great field trip. And for non-members, it's only $25. So that'll be next month. Our education partners are doing great things. If you're fortunate enough to have a training education allowance from your workplace, if you don't use it, somebody else will. So keep tabs on our website and our newsletters on that. And we're very happy to welcome Miss Amy Duray to our chapter stage. Amy is one of those project managers and program managers that just really are a beacon of positive energy and enlightenment, and you want to sit by them, talk to them, learn from them. So we've heard through our experience surveys that you'd like to hear more from the state and the county, and not just education providers or entrepreneurs. So we're happy to have somebody from the State of Maryland Department of Commerce in the Federal Business Relations Division. So how the state works with the federal government, and that's what you'll hear a little bit today. She's also a former PMI Baltimore chapter volunteer and really moved the needle within that chapter. As an Army veteran, she's sitting at a table with 2 former U.S. Marines and holding her own. So. And a great career growing of leading people, projects, and programs. So we welcome Amy to the stage, and give us 1 second for us presentation transition.
Thanks, Matt. Well, hello, everybody. While Matt's changing the slides, I'm going to provide a little bit of a disclaimer. What you're going to get is Amy Duray's take on some of these things. Some of these things are my work slides, and those will be pretty clear, but I want to just let you know that I'm going to be talking to you out of my personal experience. I've been with the state now almost 2.5 years. I started in January. I actually came to work the week before Wes Moore, so that's my claim to fame. So I've only really known this administration, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the experience that I've had inside the administration. And I want to just say that I welcome questions. If I think that I'm going to get myself in trouble by putting a particular answer out on YouTube, I might ask you to ask me after the camera goes off. But I'm happy to take questions, and feel free to ask them at any time. So this is our agenda. You know, I'm a project manager. I gotta have an agenda. So I did note that my next to last bullet is some other stuff, because I've got like just a hodgepodge of things. I felt like the state would want me to tell you if I was standing up in front of you for an hour. So that's what that category is. So I work for Maryland's Department of Commerce. Maryland Department of Commerce is one of 20 executive departments in the Maryland state government. Our head count, as of the FY 2026 budget, we have 208 authorizations, of which we have about 185 positions filled. So we are not a very large state agency. I think we're one of the smaller ones. What is the Maryland Department of Commerce? If your frame of reference is the Federal Department of Commerce, we are not aligned in any way. So we are primarily a resource for businesses. Businesses are our constituents at Maryland Department of Commerce. So we do a lot of projects that are really focused on businesses and industry development. So the type of things that we do that are listed here on the slide, you'll see we play a very large role in taking Maryland businesses to trade shows across the globe. It's one of our biggest programs. We'll put out a call, like we're going to take 20 companies to go to the Paris Air Show, the week of the 15th of June. And we'll basically put a call out there for Maryland businesses to basically pitch to us why they think they should go on our dime. And once we do take the companies there, we buy the trade show booth, and we provide them an opportunity to make those connections at those trade shows. The individuals are then responsible for their like per diem type expenses, right? But we do take companies to these trade shows. That's one of the biggest things that we do. We also have a sector growth unit. It's called the Office of Strategic Industries and Entrepreneurship. And that organization takes a look at the businesses that are in the state, the trends in the industry, and is really working to push Maryland's policies in a direction that will get us into a better place to be more supportive for those industries. And tells the Why Maryland story. So we also, and I'm going to show you this on a different slide, we have a lot of communications assets at the Department of Commerce, because we are telling that Why Maryland story. Why as a business do you want to come to Maryland? Why as a new graduate do you want to come get a job in Maryland? Those are the kind of stories that we look to tell. We also do a lot of work for businesses in terms of providing site location assistance. So if you're a business that is not in the state of Maryland and you win a government contract, okay, I'm going to pretend it's 2024. If you come and you all of a sudden need to have an office in the state of Maryland, we could assist you with finding that office, what works best for your business, and what's ready for you to move in. And then we also have like a little bank inside Maryland Department of Commerce. We do a lot of lending programs, lending that's sometimes in that kind of sub-competitive market for some particular clients that might be not someone who would be able to easily get commercial financing. We also do a lot of tax credits and job training grants, which is a little bit strange because you would think that would be in the Department of Labor, but we have a very strong partnership with the Department of Labor. And remember, our clients are businesses. So our workforce training grants are those that are going not to an individual, but are going to a business, particularly for a business purpose. You probably could make a case to get Maryland to give you a grant for PM training. I'm just saying. As long as it is something that is specific and targeted and is actually going to, the rationale being contribute to the Maryland workforce readiness across the board, you can probably make a case for a partnership for workforce quality funds. Things like onboarding, that kind of stuff, that doesn't really move the needle. But if you're talking about like developing a competency in your employees, then that's the kind of thing that we're going to fund. So this is the simplified org chart. And I tried to make the print as large as possible, but you'll see kind of just what I've described. We are basically 3 different stovepipes within the department. So you have one stovepipe that's tourism and the arts. So that's a huge component of what we do. Then you have the innovation and growth stovepipe, which is fairly new. We reorganized about 6 months ago now to create these 2 different silos within the department. Before it was a single business and industry sector development silo, but as we're going to talk, economic strategy has been a big driver for the current administration, and we're going to talk about how we're kind of growing to meet that need. You'll see my star there. That's me, military and federal affairs. So I'm going to talk about the purpose of my office, but that's where I sit, and I'm one of 3 program managers in that office. So we talked about those strategic industries. So we have a group that's specifically out there looking to recruit strategic businesses in those strategic industries to the state. And we're also looking to clear the policy field to make those industries a success in the state. International investment and trade. Anybody here heard of Select USA? Anybody know what Select USA is? So Select USA is a big conference. It's happening next week at National Harbor. And it happens every year. And it's basically a place where foreign companies come if they want to create a branch or a headquarters here in the United States. And you go there, and almost every state in the union has a gigantic 30 by 30 booth. And they're there to pitch why you should come to their state. You know, why is it a good ecosystem for your business? Do we have a favorable tax structure for your business? Do we have a history of partnering with your type of business for infrastructure repairs? All these kind of things. So Select USA is kind of big, or our Office of International Investment and Trade, that's their big, that's like their Super Bowl. And I was in the office yesterday and they were ready to go. They were loading cars. It was just amazing to see how they're getting ready to go for Select USA next week. So then there's the business attraction and special projects side of the stovepipe. The Regional Growth and Retention Office is a very special place. It is about 12 individuals who are the experts in any particular location and jurisdiction where they are assigned. So we have folks who are largely one-for-one. Miss Carla Merritt is the Montgomery County business or senior business developer for us. And the whole reason we have those experts is because they are very across the state. We talked about the incentives at the state level, but at the municipal level, at the county level, there are probably additional programs that you might qualify for in terms of economic incentives. And so those individuals are the experts in that kind of deep stack of what that incentive structure might look like. So we have those folks all across the state. Several people have more than one county. My friend Andrew has Washington, Allegheny, and Garrett County. He puts a lot of miles on that government vehicle. But anyway, they live in those communities. They work in those communities. Often they are co-located with the County Economic Development Authority, and they know that market very, very well. Then we have a business recruitment and location services team. This is a group that is primarily real estate oriented, and they work primarily with consultants who are working for large businesses, working on site location decisions. And oftentimes what that turns into is almost like an RFI or an RFP, like, you know, a business, let's say Amazon wants to have a headquarters. That's a great example, right? And so basically they hire a consulting firm, and that consulting firm comes to our business attraction office and those across the United States. And it's basically like, give us your best package. What can you do for us to get, how can you convince us to come here? What's your workforce look like? What's our tax structure going to look like? That's the office that's running that play. Finance programs, like I said, we have a little mini bank. It's a significant portion of that 200 people that work in that incentive program office. They are basically like the back end of your bank. I mean, they're the same kind of competencies that are there. And then the Governor's Office of Business Advancement. This is a new office for us. This is part of our reorganization. And many of you may have heard that Governor Moore, at least he says this to us. I don't know whether this has actually made it to the public, but he will say, if I'm going to Texas for a National Governors Association meeting, his goal is to bring one business back with him when he comes, right? Okay, that's his play. He's a very competitive guy. That is what he likes to do when he goes out to these types of things. And or he went to the trade mission to Japan and South Korea just about 2 weeks ago. And so the Governor's Office of Business Advancement is basically his team. Once he goes out and makes those connections, that's the team that gets to work on clearing the roadblocks to making that happen for those businesses to locate here. Yeah.
Focus on retention. We know that the past couple weeks has been a little rough with the NFL returning back to the district and the Six Flags America having to transition out later this year. Was your department a part of that on the retention side, trying to keep those entities, or?
Yes, yeah. Us and groups at the governor's office. And then, you know, we can talk a little bit about the kind of back end of that, like having lost those businesses, what's going to happen. And I'll talk about that in just a little bit. All right, so I'll talk a little bit about my office. I'm in the Office of Military and Federal Affairs. And this office was started in 1999 through an act of legislation in the Maryland legislature, because the federal government was initiating movements under BRAC at that time. So the base realignment and closure statute. So this office was stood up in response to that. And I'm going to do a show of hands here. Do you remember, or do you think, was Maryland a net winner or a net loser in BRAC 2005? If you think we were a winner, put your hand up. Okay, only one winner. Okay, but we were a huge winner in the BRAC 2005. Two big closures landed populations here in the state. The first was the closure of Fort Monmouth, New Jersey, and almost all of those assets moved to Aberdeen Proving Ground in the wake of that. And then, of course, there was the Walter Reed closure that consolidated the medical facilities in Bethesda, Maryland. So we were fairly large winners in that BRAC. I sit in the office with two other program managers. So there's a program manager for the Army, Dean Ertwine. He's a retired brigadier general. And he, of course, covers all the Army activities in the state, to include Aberdeen Proving Ground, Fort Meade, Fort Detrick, and the Army Research Lab, a number of Army assets across the state. Amy O'Donnell, also known as the other Amy in my office. She is a retired Navy SES. She's an engineer. She spent most of her time at Indian Head in Southern Maryland. And she is our Navy program manager. My boss, Lisa Sabota, she covers the Air Force. We have, of course, Joint Base Andrews in the state, and she herself covers that particular asset. I have the 57 federal activities that call Maryland their home. So I have a huge portfolio by comparison. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But also within my office, because we are a government entity and we run programs, we also run programs. And so that's why I'm going to show you this slide. So we run a number of programs, including the Maryland Military Installation Council, which is a standing committee of the state government, and it convenes approximately 3 times a year. And that is basically a 3-hour meeting where we bring all the installations from across the state together, along with community resources that support those installations. And typically we also bring DoD level resources and speakers that, you know, it's an information sharing type event, and anybody can go. It's open to the public. It happens typically in one of 2 locations, either the government center in Crownsville, over there by the Maryland Renaissance Festival, or at the MDOT headquarters by BWI Airport. So that's a public meeting. Anybody can join. All you have to do is sign the paper when you get there. Another program that my office oversees is the Defense Technology Commercialization Center. We received a grant from the Office of Local Defense Community Cooperation several years ago, and we received a renewal of that grant last year for this service. And what this office and program seeks to do is take technologies that are being developed on military bases or in DoD research laboratories and commercialize them through tech transfer. So this organization does a lot of work with companies who are looking to enter into a cooperative research and development agreement with a laboratory, or a patent licensing agreement, something like that. And so this is a kind of cohort client-based organization. Right now there are 41 clients in the DefTech, and they work together with coaches. They have to go through a screening process to see if they are, you know, a suitable level of maturity to be able to kind of take it to the next level and get those agreements in place with the government. But that's a big part of what we do. We also run the Maryland Defense Network, which is basically our own version of SAM.gov that everybody loves. That's something, again, that came out of a grant that we received to map our supply chain. And we've been able to kind of leverage that tool in the years since to develop this kind of free business intelligence tool for businesses if they want to access it. All right, and this is the part Bill wanted me to talk about. So let's talk about some of those incentives. I talked a little bit about the Partnership for Workforce Quality already, which is there are just a ton of different tax incentives that are out there. So the Employee Security Clearance Cost Tax Credit, you can apply to get some of that cost for your business to get employees cleared through the DCSA. You can get that covered through tax credit. Buy Maryland Cybersecurity. So many of you may be aware that the DoD is, I know they did a temporarily suspend the CMMC requirements, but I know that's coming back. And we have a program where if you buy services from a qualified and identified Maryland cybersecurity vendor, you can get some of that offset through your taxes. So this is a program where we pre-vet the companies, and the companies are enrolled in the program. And then if you are also a Maryland business, or you pay taxes to the state of Maryland, then you can apply to have some of that offset if you have purchased through those businesses. And then another one that I always like to highlight is the military personnel and veteran-owned small business loan program. So this is one of the video lottery terminal loan programs. So it's funded by your video lottery terminal dollars. But basically, you can apply for a loan. It is typically $50,000 is the cap for that loan. But if you are a veteran-owned business, or if your business employs a number of veterans, there's a standard for how many veterans you might employ within your business, then you might be eligible for that. It is a 0% loan for 5 years. So it's a great program. Now, I'm going to tell you a little secret about incentives. So the Maryland fiscal year starts the 1st of July. And typically what happens is, we get the budget, yay. We turn on the spigot on the 1st of July. Typically, it takes us 3 or 4 weeks to get our act together. But if you think you want to be involved in one of these loan programs or incentive programs, it behooves you to get there at the beginning of the fiscal year, because the money does run out. So that is my guidance to you. We also do a lot of strategic partnerships through the EARN program, which again is our partnership with the Department of Labor. That is very much focused on individuals, and a lot of the EARN program grants are targeted at non-college, trade type educational programs to bring folks into the workforce in those kind of skilled trades. But that does include a lot of cyber and IT, by the way. So the reason there's a QR code here is because remember how I told you about those regional representatives? If you were going to reach out, there's a contact page there at that QR code. And I think, Matt, you'll send the slides out, right? So you'll have them. Okay. So this is the part that doesn't have words. So one of the things I wanted to kind of talk about tonight is how complexity factors in what we do in state government. And so I made this kind of quick little gear thing because I was trying to conceptualize how I was going to tell this part of the story. One of the things I'm trying to communicate is just, because it was new to me when I joined state government, is just how we're like a layer cake in some respects, right? I talked about our stovepipes, those are our verticals, right? But there are people like me in the organization whose job it is to go out and do public engagement, right? I love that I'm being asked to return to work a 3rd day in the office, because I tell my boss, like, if I'm in the office, I'm not doing what you're paying me to do. I'm supposed to be out of the office, right? So that a lot of us are in that space, right? We're working directly with businesses. We deal with businesses every day. We are at resource tables out in the community. And then there's this whole other gear called the program delivery folks. So in addition to kind of that banking organization that I talked about, Maryland Department of Commerce does a lot of grant making, We do grant making to academic institutions for purposes of different types of like entrepreneurship programming and other types of academic support services that support a healthy ecosystem for employees and for entrepreneurs. We do manufacturing improvement programs. So there's a whole like layer of the cake that's that also. And then you have kind of I'm going to put it at the top, right? That kind of policy and strategy layer that's happening. And one of the challenges I think in our organization is that there's not a lot of information flow from piece of the cake to piece of the cake, up and down. And that creates problems. In my particular job, I feel like I can be on at least two of those cogs at the same time, which is very difficult to operate like that. But one of the things I wanted to talk about in this slide from the perspective of the Maryland Department of Commerce is what are those kind of external cogs, right? If Maryland Commerce is those three big cogs in the middle, right? That's me and my coworkers. What are the other things that are acting on the system? And in the state, it's important to understand that if you go to our website, you will click and there's a whole page on boards and commissions. Okay, and that is why there's boardroom tables on some of those things. A lot of the policy direction, a lot of the understanding, kind of intelligence gathering, we might call it, happens at those boards and commissions. So in addition to like my Maryland Military Installation Council, which is probably one of the smaller ones, we have things like the Life Sciences Advisory Board. We have the Maryland Aerospace and Technology Commission. We have the Maryland Economic Development Commission. We have the Maryland Economic Council. All of these have different roles and they are staffed by individuals who are appointed by the governor. And then there are several folks who are ex officio members of that. So I'll give you an example. The Maryland Aerospace and Technology Commission, which is new. It was actually created in 2000 and through the legislative session in 24. It has a number of appointed members, largely from other organizations that are conglomerations of aerospace businesses, like the Maryland Space Business Roundtable, for example. Also, the Southern Maryland Navy Alliance has a seat on that organization. The University of Maryland has, of course, a seat on that organization. And so a lot of the information that we get that drives the policy of the state comes out of those commissions. And by and large, most of them have mandates in the statute for how often they meet. Do they make an annual report? Like all that kind of stuff. But I'm saying this to let you know that if you want to make a difference in the direction of economic policy in the state, being appointed to a board or a commission is one really great way to do that. And maybe it's not you, but maybe it's your CEO or your vice president of operations. Like if, I don't want to say it's a cheat code, but there's a lot of valuable conversation that happens in those rooms and that then kind of feeds into the broader economic strategy. And we'll talk a little bit about that. And then I just added gray cogs for the whole rest of Maryland state government. So economic development in the state is very complex. We are the Maryland Department of Commerce, but we don't have full purview over the entire economic development apparatus that the state wields. Another organization that you may have heard is MEDCO, or the Maryland Economic Development Corporation. How are we different from MEDCO? Well, MEDCO is the state's bonding authority. So for those of you who are aware, like when there's a large construction project that's going to take place in the state, that the state is going to somewhat underwrite. That activity goes through MEDCO. So MEDCO has a lot of real estate competency. They have a lot of real estate development competency. They themselves have a banking entity within them to actually administer the bond programs on behalf of the state. So when you're thinking about a big redevelopment project, like the stadium, like Six Flags, anybody heard of Port Covington? Yep. So Port Covington used to be this little spit of land over by the cruise terminal in Baltimore. Now it's called Baltimore Peninsula. So that was a MEDCO project. They came in, found the investors for that, found the commercial real estate for that, issued the bonds to generate the revenue that Maryland was required to put to the table. And that's how those big types of projects happen. You might also, you probably heard of it in the wake of the Key Bridge collapse, but Sparrows Point which is now called Trade Point Atlantic, right? It's a huge port that's on the other side of the former Key Bridge. That was also a Medco project. That's how that kind of big development gets done in the state. So that's one of those other great cogs. Tom Sadowski is the CEO. He's an excellent human being. I think maybe he'll come and talk to you next time. I think he'd be great. The other piece of our economic development apparatus that's also a public-private partnership is TEDCO, which is Maryland's Technology Economic Development Corporation. TEDCO operates a little bit like a venture capital fund, and it receives some investment from the general funds of the state, and they are our administrator for our Deaf Tech program. But by and large, they are out there courting investment from Maryland investors, and they are providing a mechanism to get that into the hands of entrepreneurs for the purpose of accelerating technology development here in the state. Maryland is a huge R&D state, and so I think it's a very, probably a more significant piece of our economic development toolkit than what you would see maybe in some other states. Okay, and then the other piece of it, and I swear I'm going to stop talking on this slide, is like the Department of Commerce is part of what they call the Governor's Commerce Subcabinet. So economic development has a lot of different facets. We already talked about labor and how we have that close partnership with labor for the workforce piece of it, but there's also the Department of Housing and Community Development. They administer the block grants, the block grant program, which is part of a Department of Health and Human Service program. You have the Department of Planning, who basically does all the master planning for the state. You have the Department of the Environment. You have Department of Veterans and Military Families. There's a number of cabinet level officials who sit on that commerce sub-cabinet, as they call it. The governor has a number of these sub-cabinets, of which commerce is just one of them. There's also like a sub-cabinet for sustainability. So it's just these different groupings of cabinet officials that kind of come together for these specific purposes. And then that big red cog for me is the federal government. It's so funny. I was reading tonight, I'm a big fan of Reddit, which, you know, don't judge. I'm sorry. That's just kind of my guilty pleasure. But on Reddit, I've seen it referred to as in title case, the circumstances. I think that's like brilliant, right? This is the circumstances, right? I will just say from my perspective, you know, I worked hard for 2 years to build my contacts in federal agencies. Like I hit the ground, my position had been vacant for 2 years. I was out there at events 2-3 times a week, and I hear from no one on the federal side. No one. I worked very closely prior to January with my GSA counterparts. So Maryland is covered by 2 different GSA regional offices. So there's the National Capital Region office, which handles Montgomery County and Prince George's County. And then there's the Philadelphia office, which covers the rest of the state. So I have very good working relationships with all those folks. My GSA contacts, I'm not going to name you, like they've just gone dark. And my one contact who I was telling the story at the table, we're working on a regular disposition of a government property in the Riverdale Park area, just north of University of Maryland. So this is a process where the government has a federal building they want to get rid of. It's a 2-year-long process. It's very well spelled out in GSA's regulation and processes. And we started this back in December. So anyway, I say that to say that he has a need to call me on a periodic basis to give me updates, you know, where things are moving through that process. And he started calling me at like 5:15 at night and trying to leave a voicemail on my voicemail. And I got wise to him, you know. So now if I see a phone call coming in at 5:15, I pick it up, you know, just so I can catch him. But that's just the reality of our relations with the federal government at this point. For those folks that I'm still in contact with, it's probably because I have made more than just a professional connection with them, you know, and that's, it makes it hard to do the job. And but I totally understand why I'm not getting any phone calls. So just thought I'd share that story. Oh, and I also told this tale at the table. We were working on that. We had a meeting about that Riverdale Park building the very day that that list of 240 something properties that Doge was going to liquidate came out. And my experience on that day was having this meeting with all these experts from GSA that I work with all the time and asking them, you know, okay, great, thanks. You know, do you see anything else coming down the pike? Oh, no, this is the only thing that's in the pipeline right now. And then like 2 hours later, that list is out. So that, you know, really did communicate to me from my perspective that there is an element operating outside of the rank and file, right? It's definitely operating outside the rank and file. It's definitely not integrated with their regular business processes. It is just something different that's at work in those agencies. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about economic strategy. Sorry, it feels very heavy, but I like talking about economic strategy because my boss, Wes Moore, he has a catchphrase. You probably heard it. It says, Maryland is asset rich and strategy poor. Have you heard that before? I hear him say that all the time. We're asset rich and strategy poor. So he really came into office with a head for let's build a strategy. Okay. And I did strategy consulting before I came to this job. So I'm like, all right, boss, I'm ready for you. Right. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my experience with the economic strategy for the state. And again, this is just to give you an idea of a little bit of the complexity that's at play. Oh, well, I have you. How many of you heard that we have a budget crisis? Okay. How many of you heard that the governor's signature piece of economic legislation did not get passed? Okay. Yeah, it didn't. It didn't get passed. Up to the very last week, we thought we might actually get the Decade Act through the legislature, and it did not happen. So we're going to back up. It's 2023. Very first week of the Moore-Miller administration comes out this executive order, which I don't expect you to read because, you know, print is way too small. But basically, this is a decree that says we're going to have an economic strategy, and I'm going to stand up the Maryland Economic Council to deliver the strategy. This executive order created this council, determined who was going to be on it, and basically gave them a mandate to provide this report that you see here, that all of you can go out and read if you're so inclined, to be published by October 2024. So the very first thing that this commission does after they storm and norm and form is they make a SWOT analysis. Okay, classic consultant move, I love it. But, and I have some figures which I didn't actually put in my brief, but it's in my additional slides that kind of gave you an idea of like where this council saw as the strengths and weaknesses. Some of those things are related to what I've told you. One of the largest findings of this report was that they believe that, like other states, Maryland needs to consolidate all of its economic development activities under one banner. They believe that part of the reason why we are not as nimble as we might otherwise be is because we have this kind of decentralized structure to our economic development activities. So I think it's not surprising that October 2024, this report came out, and then November 2024, they reorganized my agency, right? So that's kind of what's at work here. So that is what happened at the very beginning, and then, you know, a little bit later in October. So at the same time, about May of last year, 2024, so about a year ago now, the Moore-Miller administration put out a comprehensive state plan, which is primarily a performance plan. And anybody can download this document, and there'll be a link when you get the slides. But you'll see there's more than just economics on this list, but I highlighted the economic objective here in red, creating an equitable, robust, and competitive economy. And just because I know you can't read it, each one of those 10 has this kind of sub-metric breakout within the report. And within the economics, it's develop key sectors, right? We already talked about that. That's something that we're engaged in. strengthen and incentivize diverse local small businesses and entrepreneurship, right? So again, that you're seeing, that's, I won't say that's new. I mean, Maryland has a big push for entrepreneurship-based programs. I mean, look at TEDCO, but really kind of formalizing that and creating metrics around that so that we can measure and, you know, chart progress towards that. And then attract and secure federal, private, and foreign investment, which is like hopelessly broad, right? Just let's say attract investment. But you can see it's part of a broader performance plan. And so this represents a fairly new step for Maryland. We did previously, and we still do, have a separate performance management plan that's executed through the budget process, which is run by the Department of Budget and Management, DBM, which also has a number of metrics. If you are like me and you ever get hired into a state job and you want to go see what people care about for your job, you can just go to the management plan and see what they measure. In my case, the number one metric for the state of Maryland Department of Commerce is the number of jobs created, right? Which I think is an interesting metric, but as most of you know, like if you create jobs in one area, that doesn't mean the other jobs don't fall off the plate, right? So anyway, interesting. Oh. Yes, but we only count the ones we create. What I'm getting at is there's no way to measure the net. At least there's no easy way to measure the net, right? Now, the Bureau of Economic Analysis does that. Department of Labor's economist, he does that, right? But in terms of like that actually being our metric and something we can control, I don't know, it's a little fuzzy. So yeah, unemployment level, we can talk about that in a little bit. All right, so I did want to actually talk about a project since this is PMI. So I wanted to talk about the Build Our Future program, which I was a part of starting. Again, remember I came into my job the week before the governor, and one of his signature pieces of legislation from his first legislative session was this, the Innovation Economy Infrastructure Act of 2023. This is a 7-page document that's going to become important later. 7 pages. So what it did was it created the Build Our Future grant program, which is still running. It actually is a pilot program, so it was to run for 4 years. The initial year, it was funded at $10 million. That's how much money we had to give away. And the intent was for the department to receive applications from industry across the state in these key sectors that you see listed here, and basically have them tell us what would accelerate their business, right? What piece of infrastructure, what can we build you that we need, right? And so what does that look like? That looks like skiffs. That looks like wet labs. That can look like one of my favorite projects from 2024, which was a proposal from the Maryland Association of Community Colleges to together come and build a cyber range that could be accessed by any community college across the state, right? So this was basically his, the governor's intent was to like, let's make some big bets, right? You can get up to $2 million through this program in a single grant. It's probably one of our largest grant programs outside of basically our Sunny Day Fund, which is our big recruitment fund for large businesses, right? Because when the Amazons of the world come calling, $2 million does not move the needle, right? But these are our homegrown Maryland businesses. That's the intent. Another thing that was really great, another project that was really great in 2024 was a fertilizer company in Carroll County that brought us a plan to create a bespoke fertilizer production line. So you, a farmer, bring them a piece of soil, a jar of soil, and they will do the soil analysis and make you exactly the fertilizer that you need. no more nitrogen than you need, no more phosphorus than you need, exactly what you need for your field based upon what you're going to grow on it that season. It was the only production line like that within a 100-mile radius. So we're talking about like serving the farmers of southern Pennsylvania and most of Maryland. So, and that was really great because it also supported our Chesapeake Bay goals, right? So that's what the Build Our Future grant program was about. 2025, it did suffer a funding decrement, so it was only $7 million. And I did just look through the budget today, and we got $7.5 million for next year. But it's interesting to start a grant program from scratch. So, you know, but that's okay. Maryland Commerce, we make grants. Like that's part of our business model. So we had the competencies there with how to manage grants, you know, how to put out a NOFO, you know, how to structure a response so that we get good responses from vendors, right? And actually, we'll talk about that in the next bullet, but here's one thing that was not defined in that 7-page piece of legislation. What is innovation? Right? So that was, I'm trying to communicate, like we had a long way to go in filling the gaps in what the 7 pages was, right? Because it wasn't very clear to us exactly what the governor's intent was with the legislation. So, you know, we did a kind of a negotiated process with the governor's office, right? Kind of putting down what we think this means, you know, back and forth. There was several months of that to make sure that we were ultimately meeting his intent with the legislation. I'm going to skip here for just a second to kind of the annual little timeline that I put here on the bottom. I hope you're able to see it, but what I've tried to do is express like what the process is for the application of this as it aligns to the fiscal year for the state. And so again, 1 July is when that state coffer fills up, right? We get our money, go spend on 1 July. So August and September, July, August, and September is when the NOFO goes out, the Notice of Funding Opportunity. And then part of that also involves a series of webinars for people who want to find out more, like maybe you haven't applied to this, and so you're going to go and, you know, go to the webinars. And then phase 1 of this is a 5-page white paper. Okay, so in 5 pages, you tell us, you know, what's innovative about what you're trying to do? Why is it unique? What benefits it going to have to the ecosystem? Why should we pick your project, right? And so one of the things we learned in the first year was after we got through the white papers was very clear that we had a lot of different levels of understanding around scope. And after the first round of white papers, it became very clear that we needed to structure the phase 2 submissions in a way that we would really get down to brass tacks on scope, like what's in scope, what's not in scope, and when are things going to happen, you know, because let's just say there was a lot of kind of pie in the sky requests on that, getting the hook. So I'm going to move out here. The other thing that was a big thing was auditable. Like we needed to make sure we had auditable processes on our side, because again, this is a grant program. You know, it is open to legal challenge, right? So that was a very big consideration for us, was making sure that our process was transparent and repeatable, and that we walked it, you know, every time that we did it. And then the other piece of it is really verifiable outcomes on the awardee side, because we're giving you $2 million of taxpayer dollars, right? So we want to make sure that we give, you know, we're good stewards of taxpayer dollars. We want to make sure that when we give you money for a purpose, you're actually going to spend it for that purpose. And that was another kind of big lesson learned from the first year. No Lamborghinis. Yeah. And there's a lot of restrictions on this grant in terms of in the, you know, like what kinds of things can be paid for and what can't be paid for. But anyway, so that was just kind of our lessons learned as we walk through that process. So I will say that right now the 2024 awards have been recommended to the governor's office. So we're waiting for that. And I'm sorry, the 2025 awards have been recommended to the governor's office, and I'm really kind of excited for some of those to be made public. But anyway, while I'm on the countdown, yes.
I have a question. Actually, I have two questions. The funds that, the origin funds that supply grants, are those coming just from taxpayer dollars, or are you also getting revenue from like private business? How does that work?
For purposes of Build Our Future, we are taxpayer dollars. That's coming from the Maryland General Fund. But for purposes like of TEDCO that we were talking about, that is not strictly general fund investment, but it is partially general fund investment. And that's a great question because we do also generate revenue because remember we have a bank inside the Department of Commerce. So that money gets reinvested into those banking activities of the state. So like the interest that you may pay on a secured loan from us, right? We will then turn around and either pay out as a tax credit or reinvest and create another loan opportunity for someone else. So there is a mix in the department between general funds that are appropriated by the state and then special funds, which are revenue that we generate ourselves internally.
Second question.
Yeah.
Sorry. For, sorry,
That's okay.
oh, yeah.
So much care of the soil.
For the scope.
Yeah.
What is the approach that the state government took to determine what is and is not out of scope? I know, I work on the private side. And
Yeah.
there's certain ways that we do it, but I always want to hear benchmarks from other agencies.
Well, for us, we did have some restrictions that were in the legislation. And in terms of like time, how quickly the money had to be spent was part of the legislation. Like from the time you receive the funds to the time you complete the project has to be less than 2 years. We also had other things like certain costs that were unallowed or unallowable, I should say, under the legislation. We're not allowed to pay for any soft costs. So I cannot pay for any staff. Like if you're building a wet lab, that's great, but I cannot pay for you to have staff at the wet lab. Like just, so I have to, so when it came to scoping, that was largely like, first of all, are we going to meet the statutory requirements? And secondly, is it auditable for me as a state agency? Can I go, does this give me enough information to tell me that you actually did the project that you signed up to do?
The source code for the scope was actually in the legislation.
Yes, and the PMBOK. They were there both. Yeah, yeah. All right, so I've got just a couple of little things to kind of wrap up. This is in that other stuff column. So one of the other things that my office does in the Office of Military and Federal Affairs is we run every 2 years the Maryland Defense Forum. And this is a conference. It's a small conference, about 200 participants, but the intent is really to bring community and installation and business community together. So that's coming up in June. And if you're interested and you don't want to take a picture, I have little postcards at the table. You can take one on the way out. Also, my business card is at the table. So if you ever want to reach out, you have an open invitation to number one, connect with me on LinkedIn. I post probably 6-7 times a week, different things that are coming, events in the state. And also you can reach out to me by email anytime. I'm happy to connect you to any of my coworkers that might be able to help you. And then I do just want to mention that one of the things that I've been honored to be a part of as Commerce's representative in the last couple of months is the governor's response to all the workforce issues as a result of the circumstances. So I do want to put this up in case you yourself are impacted or you know people. The state has put together a number of resources for folks who are in the job market and or have been impacted. And I do want to particularly point out, I was on a webinar today. We're doing a number of roundtables with displaced workers across the state. And I was on a webinar today of a woman who hasn't gotten her UI claim yet, okay? There is a UI ombudsman. So if your friends or you are having difficulty accessing your UI benefit, reach out to the ombudsman. The email is right there. This is something that was stood up during COVID and they've kept open. It's staffed by a bunch of consultants, y'all, so you will get good help. So, all right, and then this is me, Connect. A couple of things here. I have a link tree because I am the government contracting SME for the state for commerce. So I have a link tree that's all kinds of contracting type resources. I also put out a newsletter every month on the first Monday of every month at 10 a.m. So you can sign up to my MailChimp there. And then, of course, you can reach me by email. And my card is, again, out on the table. Anyway, I've got another bunch of pretty slides, which you don't have to sit here and listen to me talk about because I know everybody wants to go home, but thank you. Oh, I've got a question real quick. Oh, okay, 5 minutes for questions.
I work in probably one of the 57 federal government entities. And we're at the intersection of Maryland and 355. And our buildings overlook this fenced-in crater that used to be White Flint Mall.
Yeah.
Are there any plans for development in that area?
That is a great question. And yeah, so the question really was about the White Flint complex, which many of you may know was demolished, but about a year and a half ago now, 2 years ago. Yes, I know that there is a plan for redevelopment of that site. I don't know the specifics of that, but if you have any questions, I'm happy to connect you with my colleagues in Montgomery County. Montgomery County has a very robust economic development system, which you might expect from the largest county in the state. They also have their own independent labor economist. I'm amazed at the Montgomery County government, like tons of assets and resources, and I'm happy to connect you with that. Yeah. Yeah, but also the economic development folks probably would have an idea of what's planned for that site. It might just be one of the things that the Decade Act was supposed to do was create what they called shovel-ready sites. And that program, even though the statute didn't pass, Medco is kind of taking on it itself within its existing budget to roll that piece of the Decade Act out anyway. So if it doesn't already have a plan, I would imagine White Flint's going to be one of those first shovel-ready sites. And by shovel-ready, what that means is that Medco is going to, again, bond and then go out and create places where basically they're ready to break ground like instantly for new development. Because there's always cleanup. Like the demo's already been done there, but there might need to be utility upgrades or something like that relative to the site. Yep.
Thanks for the talk. I'm almost curious when the conversation that for Washington, like state, doesn't start with an overview of demographics. Let's take our own plans to be around. Is there just like this innate awareness or understanding that you share with us about not only demographics versus the economics that follow along with that?
Yeah. Yeah. So for those of you who are online, the question was really about let's see the numbers. Let's see some stats around the demographics. And so I did actually come prepared for that, but I didn't want to actually roll that out because there's a lot of fine print on this. This Maryland analysis is part of that. So I didn't actually put this picture, but the reorganization document, the strategy document that came out in conjunction with the Decade Act is a report called Winning the Decade. Okay, and that's where this particular piece of data comes from. So Winning the Decade is really the strategy piece of what Maryland is intending to do on the economy. And so I do put these numbers up. So remember that these numbers are from November 2024. So of course, this probably is not reflective of reality today because of the circumstances. So anyway, you'll see here kind of this is what the strategy really derives. So for those of you who can't read it very easily, so it's 6.2 total residents, an annual GDP of 546 billion, median household income of 98,000, unemployment rate of 3.1. At the time that this was published, Maryland had the lowest unemployment rate in the nation. And 65.4 or 65.6% labor force participation rate, which oddly enough is one of the lowest in the nation. So that means that there's prior to the circumstances, a big piece of what Department of Labor and Department of Commerce were trying to do is go find those people who are not participating in the labor force and get them to work. That was like a big piece of the strategy. We were hearing across the state, we need workers, and we had this very low labor force participation rate. So our assumption was they were out there. And I will say this, we've been doing a number of roundtables around the state with businesses in the GovCon space, because we are trying to understand the pain points and educate the government officials around the pain points that are resulting from programs of the federal government just being completely defunded and contracts being terminated for convenience. You know, we're trying to get that word out. And I have to say, on Friday, I saw the light go on for a lot of state officials and county officials, because they were still thinking that there were civilian jobs out there that all these federal employees were going to be able to walk into, because up until January, it was a voracious appetite for labor out there, particularly if you were in the cybersecurity and IT and professional services space. It's like huge. We didn't have enough people to go to work in those sectors. And so I think it's really starting to connect with folks that it's not just the federal piece of it that's been, not the federal civilian workforce that's been affected, but across the board, companies in the government contracting space are not hiring as robustly as they did, if they're hiring at all, in part because it's just too high a level of risk. They don't understand where the federal government's going. They don't understand what the final outcome is going to be of some of these assets. And so they're trying to protect spaces so that they can move folks around internally if programs get cut, you know, and that's an unfortunate reality of what's happening out there. At the risk of running too long, I will just say that those things that are in red, the strengths, like we're the third most educated state in the US. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. We have a top-notch R&D sector here in the state. We have 2.5 times as many life scientists as any other state per capita. We also have the highest concentration of aerospace engineers in the state. They live in California, Maryland, which, if you know, is right outside Bax River. And most of them work for NavAir and associated ecosystem. Anyway, but what they see, you know, the red line, again, this was November, 89% of STEM jobs regularly unfilled, right? But again, that was before the circumstances. But anyway, it was a great question. Thank you for asking. Yes, we always do try to ground everything in statistics and fact. But as we've all talked about tonight, the circumstances are just, they're in flux, very much so.
Special thanks again to Amy. She'll be hanging around for a little bit, but it is getting late, so we just ask that you be respectful of her time and take her up on the opportunity for a LinkedIn connection for any longer conversations. The state of Maryland may have lost Six Flags, but we still have Montgomery County's favorite amusement park, Glen Echo Park, which just celebrated 50 years of having the carousel, and they just had Carousel Day this past weekend. They refurbished all the carousel animals that were damaged from the storms a few years ago. So support Glen Echo Park, and thank you for being a member. Thank you for coming tonight. For our virtual audience, thank you for your attendance. I think we've stayed consistent. Usually we get some drop off, like 10 to 20% drop offs, but we stayed the same. So that speaks to Amy's subject matter and delivery. So you will be receiving an experience survey, so please be honest with us. We value your voice. We're only going to get better if you let us know where we need to be. So safe travels home. Have a great month, and we'll see everyone hopefully the first week of June. Thank you.